our first garden. It was the lower garden of my in-laws' garden, which is a fenced garden around and below. They tried to keep out the critters, the ground squirrels, but it really didn't work. I started off very conventionally. I just read general gardening books and magazines and tried to imitate what I saw and read. And my first year was super productive. And the thing was, the ground squirrels didn't know that I had started here. And very soon after that first winter, I started getting ground squirrel pressure. And then also, I really didn't like the way things looked. Everything was always bare dirt, bare soil. It was very erosive when I watered. And I started seeing that in the soil, started moving. And so I started trying to cover things up with straw. Started looking into Masanobu Fukuoka's One Straw Revolution. Started putting things into these raised berms. Then I started even putting in wood siding to try to tie things up. And it made things look better. It certainly made it so that the soil moisture could be held better. They compacted the soil in the middle. It got deeper in the middle. And so I started flooding it to try to keep it moist and cool it off. And I started expanding, creating more hard structure, like stuff for melons to climb up. And it was like super productive, and this was my garden. This is what I was known for. This is what I started seed saving in and started eating out of and started preserving food from. And this was the beginning. You can see this is that first amaranth right there. And it started off very humble, very small, just like this garden. And then soon it got really tall, as you can see right there. Soon it was this huge thing that took off and my children loved because it was so big. And then we expanded out of the lower garden because we had so much enthusiasm. We went to the upper garden. This is young Oliver. This is what it looked like. It was all grass. And then we removed all the grass and we started planting in rows, all pointed downhill, which is wrong. And we started trying to grow stuff up there. It was much harder because it was so shady. And the pressure from the gophers was higher because it was near the root structure of that tree. And so we started doing different things, started using rocks, started doing deep mulch, started using a broad fork. We started mulching more, and we had these trees, and I didn't really know what to do with the trees or a perennial area. But I kept trying, kept doing this mounding thing where I would raise the soil and pointing it downhill. But I still got plenty of food, and it still worked really well. It just took a lot of work, a lot of care. This was all hand watered. Had to cage things to protect things. And I started using mulch, like cardboard, to cover things up. Started using squash to try to cover up as much area as possible. And then mass plantings to crowd things out. And of course, the boys were always there with me helping. And the last time I was active in the garden, I was doing lots and lots of food. But then I left it as I got closer to home and started focusing more on home. The front yard kind of revolves around this gardening box. And I have tried potatoes in containers. I've tried so many different things. I've started trees in the front yard. I've done things in tires. I still have a few tires. I don't really like it as much. I started expanding outside of the front yard, and I took basically hardly any soil, and I started growing into it by bringing in soil and bringing in nitrogen fixing legumes. And very quickly, within a season, we were seeing a serious reaction. And now it's definitely a scape that no one would confuse this gravel driveway, even though a year and a half ago it was nothing but gravel driveway with a planter on it. And I even added the greenhouse to the front yard with catfish this year. So critters are a real serious issue where we're at. I had to cage all my melons that were on the ground for a long time in the garden in order to get any melons. It works okay. It's not perfect because they do get in, but it does help a lot. And then I would grow things that they wouldn't eat, like strawberry spinach, which is a cousin to lamb's quarter. All right, so this area is a really great example of what hugelkulturs can do and what a microclimate is. So I dug out the areas between these trees and I sort of put them on contour, not really though, they actually lead off contour. And I made these holes, and I filled those holes with wood, and I buried that wood, and I made these berms, and it was just plain at first. And then shortly I did the Fukuoka seed planting mix. And so I had clover, and I had daikon, and then I added some chia in there. And we can see these trees now are huge. They really responded. They were watered before, but they never responded because they didn't have the soil life and the nutrition that they needed. So as you can see here, they got huge. And then I expanded around that area too, further down the hill. And so I started doing swales all up above my fenced garden, up at those fruit trees, and then I expanded outward down along the sides. And I started making these hugelkulturs everywhere before I knew that they would just make really great gopher and ground squirrel habitat. My sons really got into it as well. We dug and dug and dug, and we dug out a lot of ground squirrel holes. And now we basically have changed the soil, and this is the end of the season right now. We've changed the soil, we've made these terraces, and the soil I couldn't dig further than that, but now I can. And so I'm going to go back and make terraces in here and do perennials with garden terraces in between. Because garden terraces really need to be flat, they can't be berms, they really need to be deep and wide so you can crowd things in. So like a double reach bed. And this is all going to be my perennial fortress that's going to surround my garden. I'm going to get back into flood irrigation to a certain degree, at least weekly, to keep the gophers down. I really believe that and the straw I used really kept them down. Now my chickens, this started with the chicken tank, and they started in the garden. And actually you can see on the side that there's a chicken run with different chickens in it. That's because those were different aged. And then I eventually made this huge chicken complex that was able to hold over 100 birds, had 90 feet of perch, had this caged in chicken run where I brought compost, and it even attached to other paddocks. It attached to 3 other paddocks. And so they had these little doors, and it was all made out of pallets. I made pallet fence walls. I created this habitat for them to eat out of. And I initially had them eating manure and processing stuff I brought them. And eventually, though, we decided that we needed to tractor them. And this was part of our expansion, but part of leaving the fenced garden behind. And we used it to transform entire areas that became our most prolific areas. And chicken tractoring is really amazing. It works really fast. So we were able to just start put, moving this thing all over the place. The only problem we had with chicken tractors was if we didn't secure down the sides and make a door that locked at night, coyotes would dig under it and get them. So what I did was I made stationary chicken house and a chicken yard that I would bring everything to. So we started doing compost heaps. I started bringing them feed. And then I started using them to make incredible mulch. You can see in the floor there's incredible mulch. Then I brought in a pig. And pig was amazing. Pig turned grass into meat and lard. And he would walk around the garden with me, and he would just follow me and eat the weeds. It was truly an incredible, awesome thing, and I'm going to do it again soon.